Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
You are listening to Castles and Cryptids, where the castles are haunted and the cryptids are cryptic. AF. Alpha, Frank. And I'm Alanna.
I'm Kelsey.
And we are on episode 125. Can you believe it?
Woot woot.
125 episodes later.
It's pretty crazy.
We might even have 125 listens now. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, savage.
Oh my god. On my darker days. No. Make the jokes. No. No, we've had some pretty good growth in the last week actually. So, I'm happy with that. Some good listens.
I think we had lots of extra listens because of those extra episodes we were putting out, part of the Darkcast network.
It didn't hurt.
Really cool. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully you guys really enjoyed all those and maybe found a couple other podcasts you want to check out.
Yeah. I enjoyed the ones that I listened to. I think I listened to all of them in the end. Yeah. On our feed, of course, so that we would get the download. But, you know.
I haven't listened to any of them yet. I actually haven't listened to I've probably listened to one episode of a podcast in the last month, maybe even 2 months. So
oh, you should. It's fun because with those ones, you know how like they did for the last ones too. They add their little mood music and stuff into the background, so it can be really cool to listen to. I'm sure they did especially for yours because I remember you could do this segment, like we could do it together or each on our own. And
I did. I had to do mine by myself because I knew it was going to be possibly too long, so I was
that's true.
Yeah.
And that's what we had done before, but that was just different for me, and I was like, okay, this time I want to like do our little segment, but we'll do under 15-minute segment. I can tell my cryptid to Kelsey for the Monster Mash episode. I was like, because I want to tell her about this one. It's weird.
Yeah.
So,
my case you already knew too. It was one of I had already covered here, like a deep dive, and then I got to be like, if you want to learn more, you can check out our episode. Woo!
I know, but it was like a great recap. Do you think I remembered the whole freaking case or whatever?
No, and it's a crazy one.
Right? I was going, oh, okay, yeah, that's the one where like that badass chick just like keeps surviving and stuff. And I had
horror movie style. She just keeps going.
I mean, there's one of those they made into a horror movie for sure. It was
you did
a good job.
I think it's on, what is it? It keeps getting recommended to me now. I think it's on Prime.
Okay. Probably.
Yeah. The town that dreaded sundown, I think the movie adaptation's called.
Yeah, it's a great movie title.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. It's not even on my list because I heard there's some like crazy stuff in it that happens, and it's not really accurate to the case. So
I mean, yeah. I think we did watch it here after you had covered it. Because, probably came up on one of Pat's watch lists or something. And we've been watching a lot of the old and classic horror ones with Rain. So, yeah, maybe it was one and there's a lot of a woman getting just kind of beaten in a field. I think or something. So. I don't. Yeah. You tend to, they all blur together after a while sometimes.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, yeah, today's going to be a good one. We haven't done anything.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. Why haven't we gone to Alcatraz yet?
Right? Let's book tickets to San Francisco right now. Let's go to
Yeah.
freaking
Yeah, I
San
mean, we haven't even talked
Francisco.
about it, though. It's crazy.
Yeah. And we can go do our own investigation of Alcatraz.
We
I guess
could. It wouldn't
next
be too
week.
far from us.
Yeah.
Well, because we were trying to talk about some like gangster type criminals today. I have a little fun fact that just was me looking into the etymology of the word gang.
Okay.
I knew I'd heard a little bit about it, and I've heard it in I've heard it in the Scottish books before, because they'll reference like something gang agly and stuff like that, which is not an expression that we use too often anymore, but we still use the word gang and gang like gangster. You know what I mean? We've built on the word. Anyway, so when you Google it, it does say that like the top answer and stuff is the gang comes from the gang comes from Old English or like Old Norse. Um, you know, English and Germanic and
That's
all that
cool.
used to be
Yeah.
pretty, tied together. It's like gang, ganger, ganga, but it meant like more of a gait course or going. Gait as in GAIT, as in the way someone like walks or something.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, it seems like the original meaning was more of like you're going somewhere, and that's kind of funny because one of the other second meanings of it is from the Scottish, a verb to gang, gangs, or ganged, and then like as an
To gang.
example, yes, no, it's like to proceed. So the example was like gang on to bed, lassie, or whatever.
Oh.
Like instead of like going, yeah. But other than it meaning going or a journey, it could also have the later Middle English meaning, which was more of like a set of things or people who go together. So that's kind of that meaning
Okay. That
now.
kind of makes sense.
Right. A
So it's just
gang.
a group.
Hanging with your gang, yeah. Yeah, so it's just, it's kind of evolved over time. And then because it's used in Scottish or Scots, they use the phrase to gang agly sometimes, which I have seen in Outlander, and it says it's Scottish and means like of a plan and to go wrong. So the reference they use is as in the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, which is how we interpret it from the original frickin' Robert Burns poem. Because
Yeah, I've heard that.
yes, but like I feel like I've mentioned Robert Burns so many times too. I'm like this poet. Gordo. Well, he probably wants to know about it because it has to do with mice. No.
We'll see. I don't know. I don't know how much of a hunter he really is. Like,
Other than attacking your arms.
yes, I actually have like cuts all over my
You were
arm.
saying.
Yeah. They're mostly healed now. They're kind of gone, but I can still see the faint lines. A lot of times they scar because I scar
Yeah.
really easily. So, yeah, I can still see all the ones on my hands that he
Oh,
did.
Gordo.
Yeah.
He's vicious.
Just mauling me, just getting mauled by a tiger every week.
Right? Oh, excuse me. I was listening to someone tell them, well, we got this cat and it wasn't a kitten, so I couldn't just give it the anymore. And they like tell it what noise they use to make it just not bite them. They get the mouth open, I guess. And you're just like, oh no, stop that. Like for my dog, I'll be like, shh. I'll just give him that noise. And like, that's what I mean. I'll be like, stop. I was like,
Yeah.
poor Kelsey. I don't think any of that works on Gordo.
If he hisses at me, I just aggressively hiss back at him. Yeah,
Next
he
thing you know,
doesn't.
Goose walks in the room and you guys are in a standoff like the
Yeah,
three
the three
Spider-Men.
Spider-Mans. Yeah. He
Yeah.
seems to respond to that. He normally doesn't keep hissing back because I'm like, yeah, two can play at this game. I
Damn.
can hiss back at you. Like,
Oh, like dogs and then just barking and then you like yell at them to stop and then they tell you don't do that because then they're just like you're just barking louder than them
yeah.
basically.
I'm like, nothing, a lot of the other stuff I can't get him to stop with. So, yeah.
Right. Every child is different.
Yes. Ugh.
And it that also that goes very well with the quote I was talking about with the best laid plans of mice and men and how things often go awry. And it's from the Robert Burns poem, which apparently is called To a Mouse,
Oh.
which I don't, it makes me think of like Ode to a Mouse, you know? And the actual phrase just was that the best laid plans of mice and men gang aft agly, which literally means often go awry.
Okay.
Which is gang and agly are such funny words to me together. I really liked it. And then the other place you often hear it in the Scottish verse is that freedom and whiskey gang together. And that's also from something by Robert Burns. So it's basically like freedom and whiskey go together, which I also think is an
Yeah.
interesting little saying. But yeah, that was my fun fact to tie in with our gangsta episode.
I mean, yeah, that is interesting. I never would have thought gang would be like an action verb, like just going
Right.
somewhere. Yeah, but I guess that makes sense
Certainly.
because, gangs are like together,
Yeah,
they
they would have
go
said it.
do crimes and
Yeah, they
that
would
kind of
literally say
stuff.
like they
Like,
gang together, as in, yeah, more
yeah,
like a
weird.
verb. You're like, oh, okay. It's not just like a gang, like a group of friends or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is
Hmm.
the essential trope
Interesting.
that my daughter loves. She's like, oh my God, all those friends look like they're having so much fun. I'm like, I know, it's a movie. They always show the fun parts, right? Like they're never like
Yeah.
sitting there fighting, right? Because that's not what, you know, not until it's a horror movie and someone's gotta get into some fights before they die, right?
Yeah, so you don't feel bad that all of them are dying. You have to have some people to root against.
No, sometimes they're all assholes though, right? You're like, why? Why do we
Yes.
care about any of these people?
Kill them all. Kill them all. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was watching somebody watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time. It was like one of those reaction videos of these two
Oh,
guys, and
okay.
uh other than like the few little like gifs of certain scenes or memes of certain
Yeah.
scenes, they had never seen it. And then
Oh
partway
no.
through, it was really funny because they're like, we're fully rooting for like Leatherface because these people are all assholes and they suck and they're trespassing on his property and they just keep
Right.
going into this man's house uninvited. And it was like, yes.
Oh
Uh
no. It's the trope of you watch something back and that you watched when you were a kid now and you're
yeah.
like, now I root for the parents because
Yes. Who
these
you
kids would
identify with. You're like, I
follow.
identified with Leatherface. Kill them all. And it was like, oh shit. Yeah, it was pretty funny. I had only ever
Yeah.
watched that movie for the first time fairly recently, and I remember thinking the same
Oh
thing.
my
I'm like,
God.
I hate all of these people.
It's like, yeah, what, very 80s? Yeah.
Yeah, they just like over the top and
Oh
annoying.
yeah. They had
Yeah.
certain personalities in those movies in those decades.
Yes, very much. But
Oh no, who's the nerdy one? Who's the slutty one? Who's gonna get killed first? Yeah.
who's the shy
So
best
silly.
friend?
Yeah. Token black guy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Who's the friend zone? There's always somebody in the friend zone.
Oh, I did have to ask Pat because I was forgetting what movie we put on for the second movie of our movie night. I was like, I remember we watched
Oh,
Scream.
the Vatican tapes or whatever it was called.
Okay, I couldn't remember the name, but then he was like,
Yeah.
it was the one with Alice from The Magicians, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that actress.
Yeah.
But not like loving it or anything, so.
No, it wasn't very good.
Oh, that's the thing with horror movies. They're hit and miss.
Yeah, sometimes everything's going great until the last 15 minutes and they just ruin it all. And you're like,
Oh.
fun. I was with you to the end, and then you lost me.
Oh, we did go back to that one on Netflix, Bodies, and watched a few more episodes. Speaking of ones that you like stick with. Yeah, well, because last time you were like, how is it? And I was like, I don't know, we really watched like one episode and then basically shut it off and then took like a break and was maybe gonna turn it back on in the evening or something. And then I was like, okay, Pep, we haven't gone back to that for like a week. Are we gonna watch this? Yeah, it got more interesting, and now that I know there's 8 episodes in it, I can't wait to watch the last 3.
Okay, yeah. I added it to my list after watching, I guess, the autoplay trailer it kind of does when you hover over it. And
yeah, got to pay attention to it, as you often mention for shows where you're like, it might be a little
certain
hard
ones
to follow.
you can't just put on in the background and kind of do stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I was having a bit of a hard time, and now I'm like, okay, I think I kind of get to know which one's in which timelines. And so that, you care about more each character a little bit more. But anyway, I want to know what you got to tell me, because I don't know anything about your gangity gang.
This was pretty interesting when I came across it, because we were both looking up, I guess, different criminals that had passed through the halls of Alcatraz. And
however briefly, no.
yeah, some of them. Mine isn't brief.
True.
He actually has technically a record for something. I'll get to it at the end, but yeah, it was kind of cool. I didn't really know that when I picked it. I was like, oh, that was kind of fun to learn after.
Right.
But there's a few different people. There's actually 2 or 3. There's at least 2 of mine that are involved that ended up at Alcatraz. So yeah, I have technically a couple people, but they're like tied together as part of this gang.
Oh man, a lot of people seem to keep popping up at different prisons. You'd be like, they must have known each other from prison. A lot of the time, they're like, oh, they did time together here, and then there, and then there. Yeah.
So this is the story of Alvin Karpis. And he was actually at least at Alcatraz, his inmate number was 325, like AZ 325, I guess is how they did it.
Oh, I didn't know the AZ thing. I did get a couple of their inmate numbers, which I like having.
Yeah, I think AZ designated them as Alcatraz.
They're so short. Like, okay, if you watched Oz or any more modern prison show, all the numbers, or like anything,
so
when you
long.
hear they're at least like 6 digits.
Yeah,
they're like, there's like 20 people here. I mean, it was only open for like 30 years, like in the 1900s. It was only really open as a maximum security prison for like 30 years, from what I read.
Yeah, something like that. So this Alvin, he was born Alvin Francis Karpowitz.
Francis.
Or it could be Karpowicz. It's like WICZ at the end. So I feel like isn't that the same as Barkowitz, the Son of Sam guy, David Barkowitz? Is his like CZ at the end, I think.
I believe it's sort of maybe Polish or something along those lines. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it said he was born August 10th, 1907 in Montreal, Canada. Montreal.
Oh, Oh, so he's
Yes.
Canadian by birth. Okay.
Technically, but his parents immigrated over from Lithuania.
Lithuania. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, even though he was born in Canada, it didn't seem like he spent too much time here. It said he was basically raised in Wichita, Kansas.
Aww.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the name of that town. I've heard it
Yeah.
in
It just
songs.
always makes me think of isn't Wichita one of the ones from Zombieland? There's Wichita and Columbus and Little Rock and
Probably
yeah.
one of the survival outposts or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So Alvin Karpis, he is better known by his nickname actually, Creepy Karpis.
Great. That's what you want.
Yeah, it was funny. It said that this was given to him because of his sinister smile. Like apparently his smile is just kind of creepy. It said that his gang, however, called him Ray. Like Raymond. But Ray. I don't really know where they got Ray from because his name's Alvin Francis.
Right.
But they called him Ray. It was in multiple sources. It's confirmed. His name is Ray. I'll just be calling him Karpis. But by the age of 10 is kind of when he started getting involved with crime. He was hanging out with all these gamblers and bootleggers and pimps. And again, this is early 1900s. So
Gotcha.
Yeah. In 1926, at just the age of 19, he was, I think, sentenced the first time. This was for 10 years to a reformatory for attempted burglary. Yeah.
Bad boy.
Yeah, not great. He escaped fairly quickly, it seemed, with another inmate. They escaped together, and the pair then embarked on this year-long crime spree. They briefly stopped for a little bit after the other guy that escaped with Karpis was arrested, and Karpis ended up moving back in with his parents. So, yeah, they had a brief hiatus and then continued on with their crime spree.
Once he got his laundry done.
Yeah. Karpis later moved to Kansas City, Missouri, and was caught stealing a car and then sent back to, I think, the same reformatory he was at before. At this time, he was later transferred to the Kansas State Penitentiary, where he met Fred Barker, who kind of introduces him on, and this is how they formed their gang, I guess.
Oh.
Because it is called the Karpis-Barker gang.
And what was the Barker guy's first name?
There's a multiple of them. The first one he meets is Fred Barker.
Okay. I may have run across something that had a Robert Barker before, and that made me go, what? Bob Barker? Not from The Price is Right.
Yeah. No, that'd be crazy.
He is old.
Yeah. So Fred Barker was notorious. He already by the time he was in prison, where they met, he was one of the members of the Bloody Barkers, as the newspapers like to call them. So the Bloody Barkers consisted of the brothers Herman, Lloyd, Arthur, who was also nicknamed Doc. So Arthur is also Doc. And then Fred. And then all of these were the sons of Kate, who was named most often called Ma. So Ma Barker. I think I call her Ma, like Ma Barker through the rest of my notes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they had grown up very poor. Pretty quickly, as each grew up, they started turning to crime to try and support the family. yeah, they had very little income or anything like that.
Oh.
And it later evolved into them robbing banks, and they were also known in town to like kill people without reason, so they didn't really need to have a vendetta personally against you. It was kind of, if you were in their way, they were probably just going to shoot you, and they didn't really
Oh,
care.
okay.
Yeah, not great.
No.
So Doc, or Arthur Barker, he was sentenced to life in 1920 after murdering a night watchman. Which, when I was typing my
Oh.
notes, I was like, that was still a thing in the 1920s? I thought it was like an 1800s thing. I was like, oh shit.
Maybe we just call it security guard now.
Maybe. Then it...
It's ironic, though, I have to say, that you were talking about Barker guys when I was distracted by the sound of my own dog barking up a fucking storm.
I didn't hear it at all.
No, I was trying to not be distracted by it, but then I was like, oh, Pat, maybe, I don't know. He doesn't seem to be getting the dog. Like as soon as he barks, we usually just like bring him in, right? And I was like, he's still howling.
Oh.
Bob fucking Barker over here. Anyway.
Yeah, so Doc, he is sentenced to life in prison. Herman ends up committing suicide, actually, in 1927, after he was badly injured in a shootout with police during a robbery.
Okay.
Lloyd was sentenced to 25 years back in 1922 for mail theft. He ended up getting released in 1938, and after his release, he worked as a U.S. Army cook at a POW camp, prisoner of war camp, but was later murdered by his wife in 1947. Don't really know more about that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like,
that
he
was
didn't
kind of
serve.
updates on the other brothers, I guess. Because not
He
all
didn't
of them
serve
are
his full
super.
time. I don't know.
No, he definitely didn't, because he was only there for what, maybe 16 years, I think. Yeah, looks like
Was
16 years out of his
I wonder if it
25-year
was.
sentence.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was like, I wonder if that was his karmic retribution. He's like, you were supposed to be, 25 years, and then he gets
Yeah,
killed or something. I don't know. I'm just speculating
maybe.
wildly.
Yeah.
Weird.
I mean, actually, that is kind of creepy, because looking at the dates, he was sentenced in 1922, and 25
22.
years, his sentence would be up in
Yes.
1947, which was the year he was
Yes.
killed.
Right?
Dun dun dun.
I only time I care about numbers, looking for these connections. No.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
that's
is
really
weird.
creepy. I was like doing the math in my head, and I was like, no, that's right, 25 years. Yeah, that's creepy.
Oh, what the hell?
Yeah, so there's really like Fred and I think it's Fred and Doc, and that's it.
Daphne.
That's really
Sorry.
that are involved in the gang, really, for like the rest of the stuff. So Ma Barker tried to do her part growing up with the sons. And while she didn't herself commit any crimes that are known, actually, it said that while her sons were incarcerated, she was known to badger parole boards, wardens, and governors, trying to get her sons released anytime they were in prison.
Oh, jeez. Okay,
Yeah, so she
Mom.
would. Yeah, you're right.
Helicopter parent.
Yeah. So upon his release from prison in 1931, Alvin Karpis and Fred Barker ended up meeting outside of the prison, I think for probably the first time. This was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and decided to formally put together this Karpis-Barker gang. The gang eventually went on to become one of the most feared and hunted gangs of the 1930s. It was pretty well led by three men. So it was Karpis, who was described as having a photographic memory, and also described by fellow gang members as being like extremely or super smart, like just
Ooh,
crazy.
cool.
Yeah. I thought that little tidbit of him having a photographic memory was pretty cool.
Yeah, criminals could use that for quite some trouble.
And then the two of the Barker brothers that are mostly involved are the brothers Doc and Fred, as well as a separate gentleman by the name Fred Hunter. He was also involved in the gang, but he wasn't like leading it. But he's one of the only other ones
Oh,
named. It said that it also consists of about 25 other members. But
wow.
Fred Hunter is kind of one of the only other ones I have the name of that was
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah, it can be hard when it's so long ago. I mean,
Yeah.
you could
I
list
think
off
there's
25 names and we wouldn't fucking know if that
yeah.
were the right names or not.
I think there's one other that gets named a little later that might have been a little bit involved, but
Okay.
uh so they didn't after the forming of the gang, they didn't really continue to hesitate to kill any innocent bystanders or anyone really that was in their way. They robbed a bunch more banks and hijacked mail deliveries before finally settling on what they thought would be the best way to earn money very quickly, which was going to be kidnapping. So they were going to do all these
Oh.
kidnappings for ransom to get money.
Okay, so the best like criminal way to get money fast.
Yeah, other than hard work and honest living. Uh,
No, that's no get rich quick scheme. Oh my God, it's like
no.
that's what everyone's always about, like Homer Simpson and everyone else. How can I
Yeah.
make money? Yeah. Ugh.
I do want to mention too, there around this time there's all these false rumors going around that Ma Barker was actually the one who was in charge of the gang. These rumors start
Um,
spreading, but Karpis, who later wrote multiple memoirs, which we'll get to, these are kind of interesting. I wouldn't hate reading these. Um, he wrote, Ma was always somebody in our lives. Love didn't enter into it really. She was somebody we looked after and took with us when we moved city to city, hideout to hideout. It is no insult to Ma's memory that she didn't have the know-how to direct us on a robbery. It would not have
oh.
occurred to her to get involved in our business, and we always made a point of only discussing our scores when Ma wasn't around. We'd leave her at home when we were arranging a job, or we'd send her to a movie. Ma saw a lot of movies, which I thought was funny. send her
Oh
send her
no.
to a movie, and she saw a lot of movies. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not even busy work. That's just
Yeah. Like
you're
get out of the
living.
house. But I just like that he calls her mom, like that's not even his mom.
Right.
Yeah,
She's like that kind
it's
of
just
figure. I like
I
to
think
think that Ma secretly just loved going to the movies. She was smarter than them
maybe.
all.
Yeah. I
Wouldn't
mean,
you do the same? No.
yeah, I'd kind of
Oh.
be like, peace out. Like
Oh, that was
uh
really too hard for me remembering the whole plan. Could you just send me to the movies again? And that way I won't be so stupid and just accidentally tell the cops what we're supposed to be doing, you know? 'Cause I'm just such a
yeah,
dumb girl.
because I know
Yeah,
nothing.
exactly.
Uh yeah. I don't really have a whole lot on like their other crimes, all that stuff. I'm sure there's information out there. I didn't really want to focus on it. I kind
Hmm.
of want to focus on them getting caught and like their downfall, I guess I'd call it.
Yeah.
So that was really these kidnappings. So in
Oh.
1933, the gang kidnapped William Ham, who was a multimillionaire and president of the Theodore Ham Brewing Company from Minnesota.
Billy Ham. Good old Billy Ham. Interesting.
Yeah, his name actually is Billy Ham. But I was surprised because it said he was a multimillionaire, and this was back in 1933, so that would have been insane.
I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I wrote something down because wrong one time because I thought it said $100,000 was their net worth, and it was 100 million. It might be in these
Oh my
notes.
god.
Yeah, I was like, what
Yeah.
was incorrect?
Well, from this
Yeah.
ransom of kidnapping William Ham, they were able to get $100,000 negotiated
Ooh.
for his release. So after this one was successful, they decided to kidnap another guy soon after. This time it was a Minnesota banker named Edward Bremer Jr., who they got $200,000 for.
Oh my
So that one was
gosh.
also successful. However, what the gang
Yeah.
didn't know is that they had basically chosen the wrong family to mess with when they did this one, because Edward's father was actually a friend of President Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Oh, FDR. Oh shit.
Yeah, they were pretty quickly put on the shit list for doing this. Like, yeah, this kidnapping had also happened recently with the Lindenberg kidnapping. And FDR was really concerned about that one too, and wanted to focus a
Yeah.
lot more like police resources into these type of crimes than like petty crimes. So they
Well,
decided
that
to
was
focus a
a
lot on
crazy case.
kidnappings.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah.
yeah, I just remember that one's got a fascinating case too, just how like
Yeah, the
the
Lindbergh
baby
baby.
seemed suspiciously kidnapped under, just some
Yeah, and then
weird
dead.
circumstances and yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. And this is like at the start of the FBI and everything too, which is so
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly. They hadn't been
Ugh,
around very long. So at this point, like with them, with FDR wanting to focus more on to like actual kidnappings, and the fact that the Karpis-Barker gang is like basically focusing on kidnappings now as well, the
right.
FBI has organized a group of highly skilled agents, which they ended up calling flying squads. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I thought that name was a
Flying
little weird.
squads.
Flying squads. Uh,
Go Power Rangers or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
These squads specialized in hunting down the biggest public enemies, and they were very successful. It said in the year 1934 alone, they saw the deaths of John Dillinger, Bonnie and Clyde,
Oh,
Charles Pretty Boy Floyd, Lester Babyface Nelson Gillis, John Red Hamilton, Homer Van Meter, Tommy Carroll, and Eddie Green. I know like most of those names. So that was
yeah.
so these flying squads had killed those people, all of them in 1934 alone. So they were very successful, and now they're on the
Right.
hunt for the Karpis-Barker gang. Um, because
Not
of this
what you want.
kidnapping of that Edward guy, especially.
Yeah. You don't want the cops on your ass just when they're like starting to get good at being
Yeah.
really good investigators. Not that they
Yeah.
weren't before then, but you know the whole like mop up this blood trope of the John Mulaney.
Yeah.
I have a hunch. Yeah.
Yeah, so now they're kind of on the trail and focusing attention on the gang. On January
Okay.
8th, 1935, Doc was arrested without incident at home in Chicago, so they had like tracked him there.
Yeah.
How many days is this? It says January 16th, 1935, so same year, like a week and a half. Not even, yeah, a little over a week later, Fred and Ma Barker were shot and killed by federal agents. It's
Oh.
believed that Ma Barker's entire reputation as this criminal mastermind was actually believed to be in thanks due to J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, who wanted to protect their public image after 62-year-old Ma Barker was shot and killed in the house. Um,
Okay.
so they kind of released this stuff saying she was the criminal mastermind, when in fact it's not believed she ever was, because they didn't want the public to hate them because they had killed presumably an innocent 62-year-old woman
Oh,
in like a
okay.
crazy like hours long shootout. It was like insane. The
Okay, so we're
house
not
though,
too sure. Like it seemed from the rest of your story that she had some involvement, but they're trying to downplay it,
like she
obviously.
knew obviously what they're doing, but she's not actually involved in it in any way. but the FBI tries to
Okay.
upplay, like, maybe she
Yeah.
is, because when we looked in their house, there was this whole cache of guns and all these other weapons, so
Right.
she had to be involved, and yeah, we shot her anyway, so that's fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Nobody likes it when you shoot an unarmed old woman.
right? In her own home.
Yeah.
Karpis himself actually narrowly missed his own death when he and I assumed fellow gang member Harry Campbell, they were able to shoot their way past FBI, who located them in Atlantic City.
Uh-oh.
Though Karpus's girlfriend Dolores Delaney, I kind of love that name.
Ooh.
Yeah,
DD.
Dolores Delaney. She was actually 8 months pregnant at the time.
Oh.
She ended up getting shot in the thigh by a wild shot that was fired by Campbell, not the FBI. It was the other guy.
So she was
Ax-
okay because it was just in the thigh?
yes,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
It seems like she's fine, as far as I read.
Jeez.
By the time Karpis was, or sorry, by this time Karpis was always on the move, and now he remained the last one on the public enemy list. The last, or the first three were already having been killed. So at this time, like, there was four public enemies, and he was the fourth. The other ones were like John Dillinger
Oh.
and I can't remember who else specifically, but they had all already been killed. So now he's the only one left on the public enemy list.
I mean, that should move you from public enemy number 4 to public enemy number 1 if the rest of them are
Yeah,
dead.
it basically does, but they didn't, I don't think it didn't sound like they added people to fill in the spots. They were just like, now there's only
Yeah.
one public enemy and it's Karpis.
They were hoping to never have the list fill up again.
I think so. Uh Yeah, it was kind of this I'd like to know, spend some more time looking up at some point. It said while on the run, he managed to pull off what was described as a crime from the Old West. He did a great train robbery in Garrettsville, Ohio, which got him like
Oh.
$27,000. So he like held up a train or something. I like to picture him
Still
riding
a
a
lot of
horse,
train
chasing a train.
robbery.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was still rampant, I feel like.
Yeah.
Before like 1950. I don't know.
Yeah. Afterward, I think after the robbery, and because of the deaths of Fred and Ma, Karpis ended up sending word directly to J. Edgar Hoover, as far as I could tell, that he planned to kill Hoover the same way that he had killed Ma and Fred. So he wanted to take out J. Edgar Hoover personally, and he
Oh
was
my
gonna like
God.
shoot him. Yeah.
Bold.
Right? You're like fucking
That's the
threatening
director of the
the
FBI, right?
Yes. It's
Oh
crazy.
God.
19 yeah, sorry, April 1936 during a Senate hearing, Hoover was actually questioned about the FBI's poor performance in finding solid leads.
Uh-oh.
The information I read that it kind of talked about this was saying that because around the 1930s they mostly were relying on like public information, which often turned out to be wrong, and
Oh,
because the
yeah.
Karpis gang was moving around from city to city, that a lot of times they were going there and he had already left or he had never been there, or it was kind of a false lead, so he was being questioned about like wasting resources
Oh.
sending all these agents following up on all these things.
Yeah.
um
Well,
he was
technology wasn't
all
great.
Yeah, they said it was just starting out, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
during this Senate hearing, he was also questioned about the fact that I guess he had never personally arrested anyone, despite being put in
Oh.
charge of the FBI in 1924. So he had
That
been in
sounds
charge of the
bizarre.
FBI for 12 years and he had never personally arrested anyone, I guess.
Or like
Um,
served as a lowly police officer before he worked
I
his way
guess
up? Because that seems
so.
weird. Yeah.
That was how I took that statement.
Huh.
Um, so Hoover takes this to heart, and after the hearing, it said he publicly vows that Hoover will capture Karpis personally. So he's going to be
Oh,
there when he gets arrested, and he's going to arrest him personally now.
sure.
Um, so it didn't have to wait long because that Senate hearing was April of 1936, and by May 1st of 1936, the FBI located Karpis in New Orleans, and Hoover flew in to lead the arrest, along with about a dozen agents who ended up swarming Karpis's car.
So that's the next day.
I think it was like early. It was like a couple weeks. I can't remember when exactly in April the hearing was, but it was at least a couple days to like a week or so.
I thought something you said April 30th and then May 1st.
No, April 1936.
Oh, okay. My bad. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, so they swarm the car. Hoover announces to Karpis that he is under arrest. There's multiple versions about this. So Karpis says later in his memoirs that Hoover came out only after all the other agents had already seized him, and then notified to Hoover that it was safe to come out.
Okay.
So that's how Karpis says it happens. The official FBI version says that Hoover reached into the car and grabbed Karpis before he could reach for a rifle that was in the back seat. And then I put in brackets, based on the information I read and the vehicle that Karpis was arrested in, the sources would like to point out that it should be noted that the car Karpis was arrested in actually didn't have a back seat. So thank you, official FBI version. Whoop whoop.
Wow.
Yeah, they're like, he was reaching for a gun.
Inconsistency.
And Hoover is a hero because he was reaching for a rifle in the backseat of his car. And then all the sources are like, well, actually, that model of car doesn't even have a backseat. They're like, cool. Thanks, official version.
Yeah.
You're probably lying.
Oh, totally. Way to add some details and try and make it seem good, and then just completely
Hoover's a hero,
I guess.
Yeah.
Ugh. I'm sure he's fine, but like, don't make people out to what, like, you know what I mean? Just tell the
crazy
truth.
Heroes. Yeah, exactly.
Like, sometimes a shitty situation comes up. Like, you might not always know how to be the hero. It's just gonna be the way.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny. It was like, it should be noted that the car Karpis was arrested and had no back seat. But one thing that was in almost everything I read, which I thought was equally as funny, was that matters became really complicated when Hoover told the agents to cuff Karpis. However, none of the dozen police officers with him or agents or whatever, none of them had handcuffs with them, as they had all planned on shooting and killing Karpis like they had with the three other public enemies.
No.
So they didn't think they would be taking him alive. They didn't think they'd be able to surround him and like peacefully take him, so nobody had handcuffs to arrest him with. And
that's just not a good look.
Yeah, they're like, our intention wasn't to arrest him. It was to murder him, I guess. Karpis was eventually tied up with a necktie that was taken from one of the agents. And
oh my god.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Karpis's arrest ended up elevating Hoover in the eyes of the public, making his name synonymous with law enforcement and the FBI until Hoover died in 1972 at the age of 77.
Yeah.
Until then,
he's not well known for this gaffe.
Well, at the time, I guess people didn't really know who Hoover was. And then after this happened, like, it really brought his name into, like, public consciousness, I guess, for the first time.
That makes sense. If the FBI and stuff was just coming about, too.
Yeah, like, fairly quickly.
Right.
The arrest of Karpis essentially ended what was described as the era or the age of the Big Depression era criminals, with most of the other big names having been killed or already imprisoned. It said like Al Capone, all that kind of stuff. Like they were already arrested by the time this happened.
Oh, okay. I'm sure we'll get to some of
them. So going into like Alcatraz stuff. So Karpis was sentenced to life in prison, to the newly constructed USP Alcatraz, where he remained from August 1936 to April of 1962, that entire time, except for a brief 6 months transfer to Leavenworth. I can't remember where Leavenworth is, but I've heard that name, that prison before. It's also...
I know! I literally just
it's
heard
also pretty bad.
someone else say that earlier today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember it.
So he was briefly there for 6 months in 1958. Other than that, he spent that whole sentence in Alcatraz. While he was at Alcatraz, he was actually reunited with Doc Barker. Doc was there from 1936 until his death 3 years later while he was trying to escape. So Doc Barker, he died in 1939. He was shot. It said that they got outside. And they had gotten into the water. The current was pushing them back, so they got back onto the land at Alcatraz. And that's when people on the lookouts saw them, and he got shot. He got shot by the guards and stuff and killed on the beach while trying to escape again. But they had escaped the building. Yeah.
It's in Kansas. I wanted to double check. Leavenworth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying it right, though. I was listening to an American podcaster, and she's like, "You guys always make fun of me when I say it wrong." She was like, "But I'm sorry, I can't remember. Is it Leavenworth? Leavenworth?"
Oh, I've just heard it a bunch of times, probably. We
know more about American geography, don't worry, than most do about Canadian geography, so. Oh, we should do a series, I was thinking, where we do different province, different crimes by province, kind of you know what I mean? Then we could get to know our different provinces, kind of like how we know all their different states.
I don't know all the states.
No, of course not. But, yeah. Anyway.
So I did get a lot of my information. Actually, the bulk of my information is from alcatrazhistory.com. They have a whole section about Karpis as an inmate. And then I backed it up with some information from Alvin Karpis' Wikipedia, and then Arthur or Doc Barker's Wikipedia, and then the FBI.gov, history, has a famous cases, and then the Barker Karpis gang. So I do actually have a quote. This was from alcatrazhistory.com, that was talking about what Karpis was like while he was at Alcatraz, which I thought was kind of cool to throw in. It said Karpis served his time quietly at Alcatraz, though he was not considered a model inmate by officers. Former Alcatraz officer Al Bloomquist called Karpis a mild nuisance and described him as an inmate who complained frequently about the conditions and one who fought constantly with fellow inmates. He was known as an obsessive reader and held numerous positions in the Alcatraz industries and a kitchen assignment. It is rumored that when baseball games were broadcasted inside the cell house in the late 1950s, Karpis would bellow in laughter when the Hams jingle played during the commercial breaks, which is the ones that they kidnapped. That's the one of the guys they kidnapped, was the Ham guy. So he thought it was hilarious when his commercials played during I was like,
why does Ham sound so familiar in this context for some reason right now?
Yeah, so he would burst out laughing when it played. While Karpis is renowned for being the prisoner with the longest sentence served at Alcatraz, 26 years. He, out of anybody ever sentenced to Alcatraz, he's the one that spent the most number of years there ever.
That sounds like that's almost the entire time it was open,
Pretty well. He was there for 26 years, and he never once attempted to escape. In April,
brag about it.
In April 1962, with Alcatraz in the process of being closed, he was transferred to McNeil Island Penitentiary in Washington State.
Okay.
So that's the little blurb I thought was just kind of funny from alcatrazhistory.com. I was just like, when the Hams jingle played, he laughed. And then So he is the longest serving inmate ever in Alcatraz history. One other thing I thought was super fascinating is while at Alcatraz, Karpis, or no, sorry, not while at Alcatraz, while at McNeil, after he was
Yes.
transferred,
Okay.
Karpis made a friend. I
Oh.
never would have guessed who this friend was, but he met a young man named Charles Manson, who he wrote
Oh.
or yes, who he later wrote about in his autobiography. This was kind of like crazy to me. He wrote about Charles Manson in I think like at least one of his autobiographies that he published
Okay.
after. This is what he had to say. Quote, "This kid approaches me to request music lessons. He wants to learn guitar and become a music star. It says, little Charlie is so lazy and shiftless. I doubt he'll put in the time required to learn. The youngster has
Nice.
been in institutions all his life, first orphanages and then reformatories and finally federal prison. His
Oh.
mother, a prostitute, was never around to look after him. I decided it's time someone did something for him, and to my surprise, he learns quickly. He has a pleasant voice and a
Wow.
pleasing personality, although he's unusually meek and mild for a convict. He never has a harsh word to say and is never involved in even an argument. Um
I
the rest of
mean,
this
okay.
the rest of this I think is just kind of summarized from what he wrote later. It's not quoted from his memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
But the source said after Manson had become proficient on the guitar, he asked Karpis for help in getting a job playing in Las Vegas, as Karpis had contacts with nightclub and casino owners there. Manson told him he would be bigger than the Beatles, but Karpis decided to leave Manson on his own regarding his music career. He later said, quote, "There was nothing unmistakably unusual about Manson. He was a runt of sorts, but found his place as an experienced manipulator of others. I did feel manipulated and under circumstances where it hadn't been necessary," which I thought was a
Hmm.
little weird. And this was
Yeah,
all
it sounds
like
like it
this.
tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I can't remember exactly when like the murders happened. It was in the
The
60s,
Manson
wasn't it?
murders.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it wasn't late 60s, it was very early 70s.
Yeah, because that was
Um,
around the times like his autobiographies were, or his memoirs were published. He
oh.
ended up releasing two of them.
Yeah, he would have been
But
an older man by the time he met Manson then.
yeah.
Um, yeah, because that's
Yeah.
what made it confusing for me too. For when you said that was surprising at first, I was like, "Oh, you met Manson." It's like, okay, well, yeah, he's been
He
in the
was
prison almost
young.
until like the 60s. Yeah, they would have happened 1969 when Sharon
Okay.
Tate
So
died.
this was before the murders then, because Karpis was paroled and deported to Canada in 1969. So he wasn't even in prison.
Oh,
Yeah, so it was before the murders that he
interesting.
met Manson. Yeah, it wasn't after.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Um yeah,
Huh.
which I thought was kind of cool. He had
Weird.
Karpis had problems getting Canadian credentials because he had actually had his fingerprints removed back in 1934 by a doctor, like an
Oh
underworld
my
doctor.
God.
There's pictures I found
One of
online.
those.
It kind of looked they looked really flat. It didn't look like they were scarred up or that they were done with acid or something. I don't really know how they did it, but his
Oh.
fingertips were like perfectly smooth. It was creepy.
Like they just cut him
Um,
off or something?
something like
Ew.
yeah, it's weird. It was just
It
completely
is
flat. The
weird.
pads of his fingers were just flat.
They talked about one on, I don't know if it was, I want to say Wine and Crime, but I don't know if that's right. And a guy, after he got his finger prints all cut off, to heal it, he had to put both his hands onto his chest and splay them out like on his chest, like, and then it was
Oh,
like basically to graft the fingers so that he would have his own little skin graft from the skin on his chest. But like he just had his hands like stuck to his chest there for like a month or something. Yeah, it was bizarre. I was like, what the fuck? The things people will go through for criminals. I don't know.
So I don't know how he did it, or maybe that picture might not actually be Karpis. I don't think it was really captioned. I can't remember what source I saw it in. It might have been just one of the Wikipedia ones, so I'm not sure how much I trust that one. But it did, multiple sources said he had his fingerprints removed and he had problems trying to get like these Canadian credentials because he couldn't provide his fingerprints anymore.
Oh my god. Come on, buddy. Think.
Yeah. So I mentioned these before, but he went on to publish 2 books about his life of crime before he died of what's described as an unintentional overdose of sleeping pills in 1979 after he had moved to Spain. So he was living in Spain at the time. And he died at the age of 72.
I mean, could have been worse.
Oh, this is where I have it. There were only ever 4 public enemies ever given the title of public enemy number 1 by the FBI. And Alvin Karpis is the only one to ever be taken in alive. The other 3, John Dillinger, Pretty Boy Floyd, and Babyface Nelson, were all killed before being captured.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so he's the only public enemy that was ever captured alive, which I thought was kind of cool. And then he was the longest serving inmate at Alcatraz.
Yeah, he probably doesn't think those titles are cool, but like...
But that's pretty cool looking back.
Yeah, the other guys died. They didn't even get jail. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's... Somehow I don't think that's more romantic. They're like, I'll die rather being taken. I'm like, I'm sorry, I just don't want to die, even if I commit a crime. I don't know. That seems dumb.
I know I've seen the Public Enemy movie with Johnny Depp playing John Dillinger. I've seen it multiple times.
That just brought that to mind when you said that. Johnny Depp. Okay, yep, I can picture that movie
I really
cover.
like that movie.
Poster.
Hell yeah. But I can't remember. I know they did bank robberies and all that kind of stuff. He was really big on that, and escaped prison multiple times, but I don't really know all the details.
No, I definitely know that name, but I mean, it's so iconic. It's been featured in everything from Johnny Depp movies to, I think, REM songs. Like, I'm like,
probably.
Wait, I can hear this as a lyric.
Yeah,
being John Dillinger and being John Dillinger. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Damn. I love these kind of old timey criminals. They're so fun. They're so like they have their own code of morals and ethics and whatever they want to call it. Like, and they're classy.
Yeah,
like, they still dress classy. Yeah.
These guys didn't seem too ethical, at least. At least when it was talking about them just shooting anybody that got in their way. Not like some of the ones in the past have been, I guess, a little more Robin Hood kind of thing about like
sometimes they're literally called gentleman robbers, or you know, they're like really mad when they kill a woman, like he was with Ma or whatever. He was like, right? He was like, oh, even if she was a criminal, I don't want to kill a woman. And you're like, okay. Yeah, that was really interesting. I liked it. Thank ya.
Yeah, there'd be a couple things in here I wouldn't mind like digging more about in the future. But
the history stuff is always so interesting to me. I don't know.
Yeah,
well,
it was pretty
the stuff
cool.
we pick anyway.
Yeah.
We're not like, let's talk about tax reform.
Oh, fuck,
unless
no.
it came from like a bloody massacre or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll take a break and we'll come back for yours. I'm excited as well.
Yes, some tie-ins for sure. All right, BRB. Welcome back to part 2. All right, I've got some of Alcatraz's finest, or some of the Rock's hottest criminals. No. It's The Rock that makes me think of Dwayne Johnson. That makes me
Yes.
go, this is going to be the hot or not of Alcatraz. We do have a lot of mugshots, basically, is what I'm saying, and a couple of them are semi-cute. So we will
Ooh. I
go
need to
through them.
refresh. Need to refresh the drive.
I know, I did just upload a folder finally. So I guess for almost 30 years, Alcatraz was the ultimate destination for many of the country's most dangerous and wily of criminals. The
Yeah.
wiliest coyotes. Yeah. Such as probably most famous being Al Capone, but I think one of my favorites, so I'm going to start with him, was George Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah, I've heard that name before.
Yes, it's been reused recently by the rapper who just calls himself Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this
Boo.
guy's
His music's okay. I don't turn it off when it's on
oh
the radio, but
yeah, can't say that I even can name a song to be honest. So, but I will say that this Machine Gun Kelly, I think he's one of the cuter ones. He's got like an eyebrow lift going on in his mugshot. That's
ew, let me look
uh,
for it.
yeah, it's definitely my style. So I don't know, but he was actually born George Kelly Barnes. So that's his real name, but everybody calls him Machine Gun Kelly. So I get confused when there's articles calling him Barnes or him and his later
Okay.
spouse Barnes. But he was born July 18th, 1895 in Memphis, Tennessee, and was a prohibition gangster or bootlegger.
Yeah, he's not bad looking.
I was like, I put his mugshot up there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got nice eyes.
You know what?
um,
Not too many guys would actually be able to pull off the hat he's wearing, and he pulls it off well.
it kind of looks like he's wearing a hat like in a mugshot, right?
I know. Like, how baller is that shit? It's
Are they
great.
allowed?
It's
Yeah.
not in the side picture, but on the one straight on, it's on there.
Yes, there are some later pictures of him that weren't as flattering, but we all have our
Oh, I
days.
see.
Yeah.
Well, this one it looks like the same from the side, but then it's a different
Yeah.
straight on shot. Not terrible either. I can see his hairline recedes a bit.
Oh, right. Like I'm sure it's like a younger photo versus an older photo. Like I'd be the same where they'd be
Yeah.
like, "Yeah,
He has the
maybe you gained
exact
a
same
few
haircut.
pounds." Yeah.
Easy. Oh, and now I see a picture of just Machine Gun Kelly. Rapper.
The rapper for reference. Who
Him
is
and
the only thing that comes up if you just Google Machine Gun Kelly? You have to put George Machine Gun
Oh,
Kelly to get
really?
the other guy.
Aw.
Yeah.
Boo.
Oh, totally. But I think that's kind of why
Okay.
they pick those iconic names, like
Yeah.
to honor them and also because they have some clout and some recognition,
Yeah.
But
They're already really often Googled names.
Megan Fox likes it. Okay, I won't make fun of her too much. I was rewatching New
I
Girl.
like
She's actually
Megan
really
Fox,
funny on
okay?
that. Yeah, I like her
Yeah, she's
too.
a good actress. I like her.
She has done nothing problematic, okay? There is nothing to dislike about her. Anyway, um, so he married a Geneva Ramsey at age 19 and had two sons with
Oh,
her.
okay.
Yeah. She later said she divorced him because he was running in bad company.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, probably fair. So then he, I guess, met and fell in love with a Catherine Thorne, who I do have a picture of on the drive as
Yeah.
well.
Okay. I
Yes.
see her.
But she'll be named as Catherine Kelly because she met and married him. And she bought him his first machine gun, apparently. So really,
Oh.
really earned him that nickname. He didn't
Yeah.
have the nickname Machine Gun before her, I guess.
She put
Yeah.
the machine gun in the Kelly. She puts machine gun in
Well,
Machine Gun Kelly.
one thing said that she even allegedly gave out some of his spent shell casings as souvenirs. Like, she was just the hype girl. I don't know. She was just total PR woman as well as his woman.
I mean, I can't say if I was romantically involved with a gangster in the 1930s with how much I love the cars, how they dress, their code of honor, all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't be
aesthetic,
like her.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be like, oh my god, honey, I bought you a machine gun.
Right.
I bought you the Tommy gun for your Ford Model C.
Well, much as a woman might often have to get used to the fact that a man might have to defend his home or be a soldier or have a sword or a gun or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's manly, but it's kind of dangerous, you know? Yeah. So she was Catherine Thorne until she became Catherine Kelly, which sounds like a movie star.
Yeah.
And she's cute too. Yeah, I was glad to find a picture of her actually. So they were also involved in the kidnapping. That seemed to be similar to your story.
Okay.
It was the style of the time, as Grandpa Simpson would say. They kidnapped an oil tycoon named Charles Urschel, which they'd ransomed for $200,000. I guess in that day's money. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably like at least $1 million now. Maybe even multiple million. Yeah.
And from what I read, the FBI was on their trail, or at least at this point it was called the BI. It was just like the Bureau of Investigation, apparently.
They hadn't added the federal yet.
No, I guess not.
They're just the body inspectors, not the female body inspectors.
I mean, I do remember hearing one case, although I don't recall which one it is now, annoyingly, but you know, it's like, whoa, the FBI was barely a thing then. They were one of the first people to ask them for help or whatever. I mean, they're not much more than 100 years old as a government thing, I guess. I don't know.
It said Hoover was put in charge in 1924. So
that's 99 years old.
Yeah, so I don't know when it was actually founded, like the FBI, but he had like transformed it kind of into more what it is today, like starting in the 1920s. So, I mean, it is at least 100 years now, but
I feel like although we haven't formally researched the Lindbergh one, we did read the book of the wife, the loose biography of the wife, Anne Lindbergh, in our book club. And I thought that case, the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby, was maybe one of the first times they had like the FBI involved in something. Maybe it's that case I'm thinking of. Or maybe just because we talked about it earlier. But it was sometime around that time, like early 1900s or whatever. Yeah, that would make sense if it's only been around for like 100 years.
That was in the 1930s, I think, as well.
Crazy times. So in this case, they set up an elaborate system for the handling of their captive and the delivery of the ransom, but they didn't count on Urschel's sharp mind and the authorities keeping track of the ransom money's serial numbers. The ransom was delivered on July 30th in Kansas City, and Urschel was released the next day. He was unharmed, and although blindfolded some of the time, he was able to provide a number of clues to authorities. From Urschel's descriptions of what he had heard and saw while being held hostage, the authorities were able to figure out that he must have been near Paradise, Texas. Earlier, there also had been a tip that the Kellys were involved. Oh my God, can't talk. Yeah, at first when I read it, I think I thought he memorized some of the serial numbers, but it's still pretty impressive. Like, he kind of figured out kind of where they were, and then the authorities were kind of tracking, I guess.
I think the authorities probably before they paid the ransom wrote down the serial numbers of all the bills, and then we're like, oh, we're gonna see who spends these.
But you know how you like skim read something when you're like, maybe I'll quote this. Yeah. Still impressive. Yeah. Okay, so 2 months later, he'd been caught and was serving his time at Leavenworth Prison.
Okay.
Yeah, but he bragged that he would be out by Christmas, so they shipped him off to Alcatraz.
Oh, he's bragging about escaping. Okay. At first I was like, what do you
Yeah.
mean he'd be out by Christmas? He'd be paroled?
Right?
And I was like, no, he's talking about escaping.
And this is where they send people that attempt to escape
Yeah.
and stuff. Exactly.
Yeah, one too many times. You get shipped off.
At that time, he gave up the fight and became a model prisoner, and they started calling him Pop for, I guess, Pop Gun, which when I looked it up was a kind of toy gun that like shot out this little cork thing on a string almost. So it was just like a real fake gun.
That's kind of cute.
I'm sure he didn't. Well, I don't know. But he went from Machine Gun Kelly to Pop Gun by the end of his life.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least they're not calling him like Pops because he's like an old man.
Ball and stick. Ball, stick and hoop. Just one of those stupid games they all had.
Kicking a can down the side of the road.
Yeah.
Back in my day, all we did
ball
was
and cup.
Yeah, fuck.
Oh my god. Yeah, unfortunately, he served almost 20 years. So he served 17 years at Alcatraz.
Wow.
And then I guess in 1951 he was sent back to Leavenworth, where he apparently died in 1954, which kind of made me think like they were like, yeah, you're not escaping now, are you, buddy? Okay, go back to Leavenworth.
Little pop. No
longer the
head.
punk. Yeah. Oh, don't get me started on Pop. There's an running joke in Critical Role where the one character she pop hits everybody, and then the other guy was like, "You just hit a senior," and then just pop. That's probably what his kids called him. Pop. It was really funny. Like, anyway. It's like watching good improv. No. All right, that's Machine Gun Kelly, and now I have a little bit on Alphonse Gabriel Capone. Did you know his real name was Alphonse?
I'm sure I read it somewhere. Yeah.
His inmate number was 85, and he played banjo in the inmate band, which was pretty fun.
Banjo?
Oh,
yeah. How lame.
He has such a baby face. I think they should have called him Babyface instead of Scarface, but
yeah. I just know we have to thank Al Capone for the fact that there's expiry dates on things like milk.
Really?
Yes, he sued the government or something because his sister either died from poisoning of food for being sold expired milk, and milk was one of the first things to get an expiry date because he had like such power in the criminal world that they were like basically it was like so crazy. It's like, what the fuck? Yeah, that's why we have expiry dates on foods and like best before dates, is because his sister, I don't know if she died or not or just got really, really sick, but it's because of Al Capone. Oh. Yeah.
I mean, if she died, yeah, that's a pretty intense like origin story or whatever, where I could see where he would be pretty upset. Yeah, it's like, this doesn't have to happen. Weird.
But I'm pretty sure it was already after he was like a criminal, so I was like, I don't really know how he got away with like that in court, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he was born January 17th. That's almost he's a Capricorn. Yeah,
he is.
2 days later, your birthday. But in 1899.
Yeah.
You know, just almost 100 years or so.
Yeah, almost a full 100 years.
Crazy, right? You were born in the late 1900s. Don't worry. It's going to sound gross to you when you hear it too.
Yeah, actually it will be.
So gross, right? His parents had immigrated from Naples in 1893, and he was the fourth of 9 kids, which I didn't know. Poor woman. He attended school. Sorry, this was a quote. Do I know from where? Probably Britannica. He attended school until the 6th grade, whence he dropped out at age 14 after striking a teacher. He worked a variety of odd jobs as a candy store clerk, a bowling alley pin boy, a laborer in an ammunition plant, and a cutter in a bookbindery, all the while serving in the South Brooklyn Rippers and 40 Thieves Juniors, 2 kid gangs. Sorry.
Okay.
It's the kid gangs. That's not even the end of it. That is bands of delinquent children known for vandalism and petty crime that were common in New York at the time. So I guess like Gangs of New York era, like that movie.
Yeah.
Time frame.
Wow.
All those poor kids. Crazy, right? It was a different time.
Yeah.
He was also part of the James Street Boys gang, where a man named Johnny Torrio became his mentor.
I've heard of him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sounds vaguely familiar.
I don't know if I had.
I'd have to look it up and like find out.
I don't know much about these gangsters at all. I don't know if we even said, but maybe a bit of my inspiration. I was like, my brother was always interested in the what are they called? The Untouchables. Yeah, I think that's like kind of that same era, gangster, whatever. And yeah, I kind of thought it would be fun to do something like this. But then I'm like, I don't know anything about any of this. But it's very fascinating, that's for sure. Yeah. But yeah, that's. I'm glad we picked it. It was a very interesting topic to dive into.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. And we said we're doing a part 2, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we'll revisit it at some point because there's plenty of other inmates to talk about and a whole schwack of like escape attempts. Realized on the Wikipedia page, anytime I hovered over it, it was like involved in this escape attempt, involved in this escape attempt, and I was like, holy crap! How many times are people trying to escape? We could have a whole episode just on escape attempts.
That's true.
I'm like,
but after the next week one, where we're going to talk on the hauntings, that is, I didn't know if we had mentioned that yet, so I think that's going to be fun. Yeah, I can never remember what we talked about on here or not.
I don't think we had said it yet because we normally do it at the end of the episode.
Right, exactly. I was like, I'm not sure. Anyway, sorry. Okay, this is what I had. Before he turned 21, he was involved in several violent incidents in a youthful scrape at the Harvard Inn. So, like, I guess a hotel? Probably not Harvard itself.
Yeah.
A young hoodlum named Frank Galluccio slashed Capone with a knife or razor across his left cheek after Capone made a crude comment to Galluccio's sister, prompting the later nickname Scarface.
Yeah.
Capone later shot the winner of a neighborhood craps game to death as he robbed him of his winnings. I mean, okay.
That's not a fair win.
That sounds a little unprovoked, but I don't know the full story. Who shot first, Capone or Greedo? No, Star Wars joke. Capone was let go because no one had witnessed the murder, despite him being questioned by police. And in another incident, Capone brutally assaulted a low-level member of the rival White Hand gang and left him for dead. And since White Hand gang leaders promised retribution, Yale sent Capone, his wife, and his young child to Chicago to work for Torrio. So now he's trying to send him into safety. Basically, more drama ensues, more murders, and nothing that Capone ever gets actually, convicted for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Torrio retired to Italy, and Capone took over Chicago's crime scene. All the gambling, prostitution, and bootlegging rackets that were now his bread and butter. And then in 1926, he went into hiding for 3 months after killing someone named Mick Swiggin, which, sorry. It's the McLovin that it sounds like that makes me laugh.
Taking a swig of a drink, Mick Swiggin.
Yes, and he was just accidentally killed in some crossfire too, so it was unintentional. Yeah.
Wow.
So he had to go in hiding after he killed this McSwiggin guy, and by the next year, though, Capone's estimated worth, this is what it was $100 million. I thought it said $100,000, but it was $100 million.
Criminal empire estimated $100,000.
$1 million. Dr. Evil Pinky. Yeah.
Yeah, 100 million back then is insane today.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's just like they get greedy almost, right? Where they just like, well, you gotta keep criming. Of course, the most notorious of the bloodlettings, as this article put it, was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, in which 7 members of Bugs Moran's... Morans? Probably Bugs Morans. Can't remember now. They were machine gunned in a garage on Chicago's North Side on February 14th, 1929.
Against a red brick wall.
We saw that wall.
Yeah, we did. We saw the bullet holes.
Yeah.
When it was what, dismantled and then rebuilt in that the mob museum in Las Vegas.
Oh yeah, because it looks very intact, if that's what they did.
Yeah, I think they took it apart and then they reassembled it, and then they have like the bullet holes marked so you can see them easier.
Which is cool, but crazy. And the pictures they had there of different gang members being dead.
Yeah, you don't want to take children to the mob museum, to certain parts of it. There's a lot of
there's
dead
like a
bodies.
whole room near the end that you can kind of just like avoid because it's got like a big wall of like
that's fair.
Bodies. Yeah.
All the hits of the different like hitmen.
There's Whitey Bulger. Yeah. In 1929, Capone served 10 months in Holmesburg prison after being convicted of possessing a concealed handgun. And many Americans were fascinated by the larger-than-life image of Capone. Indeed, the motion picture Scarface, The Shame of a Nation, 1932, directed by Howard Hawks and starred Paul Mooney in the role of a gangster loosely based on Capone, who reputedly obtained a copy of the film for private screenings.
I love that.
I mean, yeah, we're kind of still fascinated with him.
Yeah, I'm surprised they made a movie like that quickly, because like it was still going on and they made a movie so quickly. It wasn't like
still alive.
Yeah, and it wasn't like 10 years later. It was like during the height of his crime, and you're just like, I'm gonna make a movie based on this criminal warlord.
Right, yeah, because he wasn't, or he had maybe just gone to jail. That's my next part, is when he just goes to jail. So yeah, that's crazy. After being transferred to Alcatraz, he became a well-behaved prisoner. Oh, sorry, that's a little out of place. But the one thing said, convict number 85 became so cooperative that he was permitted to play banjo in the Alcatraz prison band, the Rock Islanders, which gave regular Sunday concerts for other inmates. The Rock Islanders. But yes, it was that his ultimate final conviction was for just a bunch of tax evasion charges.
Yeah.
I mean,
how lame. I mean,
right? I know.
Sometimes if they can only get you for something, they'll just get you for whatever they can, right? Whatever they can prove on paper, and maybe tax evasion was the easiest.
Yeah, because before then it was several murders that he should have probably been convicted for.
Yeah. It's probably harder to get evidence on that than tax evasion, so.
Especially then, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he had been transferred to Alcatraz in August of 1934, and at the time he arrived suffering from coke withdrawal and an untreated venereal disease contracted many years ago when he worked as a banner. A banner? Wait. Nope. That makes no sense. What happened to my sentence? He worked as a banner at a brother in Chicago, but I don't think that makes sense.
No.
I was like, this was from a quote. Um, I thought he worked at a brothel, not a brother. Or something.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I think that's...
yeah. Like, basically almost everybody that's ever heard of him knows that he got syphilis, so I'm not like...
Yeah.
Just, overturning anything super surprising here. It was just that, yeah, they knew he had syphilis and it was untreated, I guess. And then he was transferred out in 1939, very ill, and lived out his last 8 years at his Florida mansion and died from cardiac arrest. And that was all I had on Al.
I'm surprised he got to go back to his mansion.
I'm not sure why.
Shit. They get him for tax evasion and he still owns a mansion? Like, how? Yeah. They didn't repossess that? The government didn't seize it?
I know. Well, maybe they were still freaking killing cops and stuff. I don't know.
I know when my family went to Cuba, there's a what is it? A house. It's like a kind of a gray stone house. I think it has like blue and red trim on it, and it's called La Casa de Al, and it was supposed to be like kind of a beach house that he reportedly stayed at. He didn't own it or something. He reportedly stayed at it.
Oh, really?
Or something, and now it's kind of a tourist thing, but they basically have set it up. There's dozens and dozens of newspaper articles and stuff in like a bunch of the rooms, and then I think it's set up to be a restaurant or something inside.
Oh, makes sense.
As well, and it's like on the beach. It's actually pretty cool looking.
I mean, I'd go there, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's called La Casa de Al, and then it's got, I think the sign is the Ford car from the 1930s, one of the model Fords, and then it says like La Casa de Al on it. Yeah.
And it's in Cuba.
Yeah, it's in Cuba.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if he did anything there, but that's interesting. I love that kind of stuff, and I love its name, the Casa de Al.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pretend that's named after me and go forth. And go there. Yeah. Many of you may have heard of the next one. Maybe not by name. His name is Robert Stroud, but he's more commonly known as the Birdman of Alcatraz.
I know that nickname because of the movie. I think there's a Birdman of Alcatraz movie. Okay. I have never seen it as far as I'm aware, but...
No, I think that movie is pretty old.
Yeah.
So, I don't blame you.
Older than Escape from Alcatraz starring Clint Eastwood.
Good old movies from the 1960s with their transatlantic accents. Why do we all sound vaguely British? Yeah. But I didn't know much about him. He apparently was a pimp who murdered a bartender who owed his sex worker money. That's the best I could figure it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess a bartender was one of his sex workers, John's, who didn't pay her, and so he got mad and killed him. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's better than him killing her.
True.
I guess.
I know. I don't hate him for that.
I mean, I can sleep tonight with that information.
I want to like him. Who are like those girls who like, how can anyone marry a guy in prison? No, I'm just kidding. But like, it's
No.
no. um, but yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a movie about him, and although from what I read, he was like a very violent prisoner.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like anything I hear about him doesn't necessarily depict him as that, but maybe I haven't heard a deep dive in a while. I didn't do a deep dive. I just know, yeah, he was apparently very violent. He was living completely in solitary because he had stabbed a guard to death. So that's why he was moved to
Okay.
solitary.
I don't like him anymore.
I mean, this is why his only friends are birds, basically.
Yeah, I'm liking him less. Continue.
He found an injured bird one day and began to study and eventually breed them. So that's how he got the interest in the birds. But apparently, once his ornithological equipment was found being used to brew alcohol at the one prison, he was transferred to Alcatraz. And I don't know if that was
Nice.
like his idea, because it seems to me like they make him out to be more interested in the birds, but I don't know.
Huh.
I think
Yeah.
everybody's bored in prison, so
Maybe
who
it was his
knows?
cellmate.
Right?
Let's
Yeah,
make
I'm
some
not sure.
toilet wine.
um, yeah, he had spent some time at some other jails and then spent 17 years at Alcatraz itself, but from what I read, he didn't actually really have any birds once he got to Alcatraz, so it was kind of like a misnomer. Like he did have birds, but kind of before he came to Alcatraz was my
Okay.
understanding. I guess, but again,
Mm,
this is kind of a shallow dive on these guys. But they're all interesting, that's for sure. Me and Kelsey are
yeah,
like,
they
oh my
are.
god, so cool. Love these old timey criminals.
Right? Sometimes you
Ugh.
look people up nowadays and you're just like, these people are like actually interesting as human beings.
God, why are us also white trash looking nowadays? Why can't we go back to when everybody wore a freaking fedora? At least, even the
Uh,
criminals.
Not everybody looks good in a fedora, though.
It's true. I didn't know if they were trying to set up a character as bad in the show we were watching today, because he was in the 40s with his mustache and his little fedora. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. Anyway,
probably.
maybe. um. Okay, so this next guy. Now this name always reminds me of one of your cases you covered because his name is Roy Gardner. Makes me think of the Gardner
Gardner
Museum
Museum
heist.
heist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think her name was like it was named after what, Isabella Stewart Gardner? But anyway, it's
Yeah,
always just
something like
called the
that.
Gardner Museum heist, so yeah.
Yeah.
Um so he was inmate number 110, a gun runner who robbed trucks and trains. He sounds similar to your Al guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Rob trucks and trains. I don't know. Like maybe they all did then, but like he seemed to love it and he preferred to work alone, and then his conviction was for armed robbery. And when Alcatraz was repurposed by the federal government from a military prison to a general federal prison in 1933,
Okay.
expressly to deal with criminals apparently like Roy G. Gardner, who was nicknamed King of the Escape Artists.
Okay. So it was a military prison before. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yes, I ran
Interesting.
across that a little bit in these
Huh.
notes because apparently the island has always been very valuable as like, oh, we should use that as like a military outpost or a fortification or prison or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So stay tuned for next week because we're going to get into some history and hauntings, which is going to be so fun.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Oh, I love these kind of ones. Okay, so he did rob a US mail truck in 1920. Um This sounded a lot like your guy. I was starting to think we did the same one. I don't know. It earned him a spot on the most wanted list, but not number. It didn't say what number. I don't know. Just that there was a huge manhunt and whatever, and he's like most wanted. Then he was caught briefly, then escaped his captors by. It said escaped or like from a moving train, so I assume he jumped off the train because how else would you? You know, so
yeah.
For dramatic purposes, he jumped off the moving train. Then he was recaptured about 1 year later before he escaped again. Then the third time they finally got him to prison, and he had been sentenced to 25 years at the McNeil Island Federal Penitentiary, which was the McNeil Island that mentioned?
Yeah, that's the
just
one
a few
he
maximum
went
ones.
to. I think so. Probably back in the 1930s, there was like 3. There was probably
like
Leavenworth, McNeil, and Alcatraz. That was probably all there was.
Yes, McNeil. And sorry, what? Because there was
Leavenworth.
Yes, and in mine, a couple of them keep going back to the one in Atlanta as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like a handful of them across the US, and that's all we got.
I mean, yeah, they were barely building the railroad still. Give them some time. Okay. So, yeah, he had been sentenced to 25 years at the McNeil Island pen in 1921. But once there, he had cut a hole in the fence and swam to shore. They couldn't hold him very long. So they basically were like, to the rock with you. You are annoying us.
And like, shoot him out of a cannon into the middle of the Sahara Desert. You can starve to death.
And he called the rock the rock. He called the rock the toughest, hardest place in the world.
Oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah.
Cry me a river.
And he had friends there. He had met Al Capone at the Atlanta federal prison, that other one that everyone kept going to. Okay. He also was paroled for some reason in 1939. He did write a book called Alcatraz, The Rock of Despair.
Alcatraz.
Yep.
I like it.
I know, I kind of want to read it. But it kind of makes me sad because he just apparently killed himself the year after he got out.
Oh.
And I don't really know why. Yeah.
Institutionalization.
Yeah, couldn't live outside or whatever.
Yeah, that Shawshank word I learned. Institutionalized.
Especially if he's been like a lot of time in the hole there, because that fucked people up to be in that solitary, like mentally. Yeah. Finally, we have the Frank Lee Morris, who I was less familiar with, but a little bit more so once you find out who he was, what he did. He was born September 1st, 1926 in Washington, D.C. Apparently, sadly orphaned at age 11. He had his first brush with crime at about age 13. They all got started young.
Yeah.
Kind of a life of crime sprees, and then sentenced to 10 years for bank robbery. Transferred in 1960s to Alcatraz, and then just became infamous for the most famed escape attempt. It is.
Okay. I was like, why do I know his name?
Yeah. Yeah, probably one of the most well-known names. In the history of Alcatraz, it was said by one article that a total of 36 inmates put the supposedly escape-proof Alcatraz to the test, and of those convicts, 23 were captured, 6 were shot to death, and 2 drowned. So.
Okay. And one of those shot to death was Arthur Barker.
Right. I was going to say, and you mentioned one that had an escape attempt.
Yeah, Barker.
Sometimes those are so horrible, right? Like just to get to the yard or whatever.
There was also apparently a huge riot that lasted a couple days or something. I ran across in when I was like looking up originally.
Yeah.
Trying to find something, I ran across like this crazy riot that apparently took place that a couple inmates and I think at least one guard or something died in. And that was from an escape attempt, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Who's this in the derpy mug shot? I'm just looking at one that you just named derpy mug shot, or did you not name that image?
No, I definitely named that.
Okay.
Hang on. Oh, that's I think Clarence, because he looks cute in his other mugshots. Where is my thing? Oh, I called mine Alcatraz Escape, right? Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah, he looks derpy in that one, whereas in the other mugshot, he looks normal and cute with an eyebrow almost like Machine Gun Kelly in the middle. Anyway, I'll tell you who it is. He's one of the brothers.
I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. He's not really cocking the eyebrow in that one.
Yeah.
Derpy mugshot. I forgot about that.
I was like looking, I was like, wait, is one of these named? Oh, and I just found Unitard Capone.
Hang on, we gotta get you back. Where did you go? Okay.
We didn't even talk about Unitard Capone.
What? Yeah, I know. I found the picture and was like, okay.
I think I was scrolling down and I didn't realize that was Al Capone. I just thought it was a man in a bathing suit.
He's about ready to wrestle somebody.
Yeah, it looks very high school wrestling team, but it's Al Capone. I don't think I've ever seen Al Capone's legs. Oh my god. I don't know what to do.
Okay.
I've never seen him not in a suit. I don't even...
I know. I love all the pictures that make him look just a little bit more human. There was a character on the show we were watching today where I was like, they introduced him like smoking a cigar with a fedora on, and Pat's like, he was a bad cop or something. And I was like, but what did he do that was bad? I was like, because they made him look bad, but I don't actually know.
I can't believe I slept on Unitard Capone.
He has a fat old baby face. I don't know what to tell you. Like, to me, when
he
I look at him,
his face carry around, and he has like chubby, very chubby face. Yeah, it's very circular.
Like, poofy lips. You're like,
yeah,
sweet as punch. You're like grandpa.
Okay. Anyway. Been distracted by how you named all of these pictures. Derpy mugshot, Unitard Capone. I'm gonna put that as the little description for the images on the website. This is the derpy mugshot picture. This is the Unitard Capone.
As mentioned on the episode, yes. I know, because otherwise sometimes, you know how they try to just download as like download one or like Alcatraz one. Do you want to override this? I'm like, no. I have to name it something else. I'm like, what am I going to name it? Oh my god.
I love it. Okay.
All right. Yes, this is just a little bit on one of the like probably the most famous escape attempt from Alcatraz. Yeah, I really like it. On the 11th of June, 3 men broke out of the rock after many hours of planning and preparation, and their ringleader was the good old Frank Morris. But as Kelsey and I were just looking at the pictures of, the other men involved were John and Clarence Anglin and Alan West. And 1 out of 3 of those were fuckable, in my opinion. But that's all that the pictures are there for. Clarence, I think he's the good looking one, but anyway, They
I don't know, none of them quite strike me.
well,
I think I've spent too much time looking at the derpy mugshot.
oh my god. Some of these pictures, I tell you, they are not the most flattering.
No, he looks like he's like mid-sneeze or something.
No! What was that one from? Like,
Well,
you're supposed to get someone's mugshot. I don't think they're supposed to be making a big face.
yeah,
It's
or
like
he's like
I was
taking
watching
a shit.
Forensic Files the other night, and they had to compare something to a previous mugshot they had of this guy wearing those classic 70s serial killer
Oh my
glasses.
god, yes.
But his face wasn't in profile, and it wasn't straight on for the frickin' mugshot. It was like tilted. And so it was harder to work with. And I was like, why would they allow his face to be tilted?
Because the lighting was poor. You have to get his good side with good lighting, you know?
Right?
Can't have
But
a
even
double
those
chin.
glasses were like, they were kind of tinted, almost like that aviator, like, ooh. Anyway. Okay. Dude, it wasn't working for you, but anyway, you can try to make yourself look better. Okay. So what we know a little bit about the Anglin brothers of the escapees. They were from a very poor family of what was called seasonal agricultural workers who traveled up and down the country picking fruit and vegetables. I was like, okay, not even have a farm, you're just picking the fruits. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
field
they're
hands. Kind of thing.
I was like, they're either dirt poor or rich with dirt. Maybe I found that from a book somewhere. We're not dirt poor, we got tons of dirt. But they apparently had quite a sentence, so it makes sense to me if you want to escape, because they got 35 years for bank robbery for robbing the Columbia Savings Bank in Columbia, Alabama. So they had a while to go through.
Yeah, that's a long time.
I mean, at the hardest place on earth.
Yeah, in like the 1930s, that was half your life.
Oh my god. And the people, even the people that went in before the internet and stuff, they were like, oh my god, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Just even in this day and age. The other guy, Alan West, was in for car theft in 1950 time, and he had also done time at the same Atlanta penitentiary. But like everyone has to do their time there.
Yeah.
Then went on to Florida State Prison that he escaped from, which ultimately prompted his transfer to Alcatraz. So they'd seen each other around the different prisons before. And they happened to be in the same cell block now, in adjoining cells, so they could easily speak at night and not be overheard.
Oh, how smart is that? That's great planning.
I mean,
who did room assignments?
The same people that built the Titanic. This prison is unsinkable and unbreakable. No, but they're really smart. We got to give them credit. So they decided they'd tunnel through the walls, build a raft to leap out into the frigid water of the San Francisco Bay, and they had to get crafty. They fashioned tools like a makeshift drill out of discarded saw blades, a vacuum cleaner motor, and metal spoons. So they also made a periscope type of tool to keep an eye on the guards, which just sounds amazing, like Scooby-Doo, like they're like popping up their little periscope, peeking. But it was pretty cool. Like they would disguise the noise of this makeshift drill under the music of Frank Morris's accordion music. Sorry, I said music so many times. But like literally they would get music hour every day, so then
it's like
they could have all the time they want. I mean, good for them, because other parts of this prison were pretty horrible, as was the style, lots of the early 1900s. But
I hope he could play the accordion well, because otherwise that was probably just torture for everybody in that whole cell block. Just somebody shittily playing the accordion for an hour every day. Oh my
Yeah, while you try
god.
to ignore scratching sounds in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, so every day at music hour they would do this, drilling around the vents in their rooms, moving the
Yeah.
vents, making the holes larger and larger until they could fit their whole bodies through into the ventilation shaft. Once they could fit through the holes, they set up a workshop in the area. I gather that was just like above the cells. It's kind of like not quite the roof, but like,
Yeah.
crawl space. I don't know.
I think
There they
so.
made like the raft they were going to use, and their life jackets, which was out of stolen and donated raincoats that were carefully stitched together and sealed by melting the rubber on the hot pipes in their quote unquote workshop.
Yeah.
They would be spending so much time out of their beds, they made another crafty craft, which was the paper mache heads to lay on their pillows at night.
It's one of my favorite details. The terrible hair on the paper
Yes.
mache heads. And then
Terrible. It's real hair.
but like it's just like glued on, and then the paint jobs.
Oh, I am wounded. I was like, these guys are like so crafty for criminals, though. Like, honestly,
They
I think,
are. It's well done. It just like looks the hair. Can't
Oh
do
yeah,
it.
it's kind of like you're looking at something like you're watching that Nailed It, and they're like, "Here's the real cake," and then they're like, "This is
Yes.
what this looks like. This is what the craft
100%.
was supposed to look like." Nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah, here's this mushy mannequin head.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, they had to use like soap, dust, toilet paper, toothpaste, and actual human hair from the barber shop, and they even painted the heads. Then they
Yeah.
stuffed their beds with their clothes and extra towels to make the little body shapes and then went to work. I just think it's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of commitment for how
Right.
many hours, even for them to make those heads, how many
Yeah.
hours that took.
Right. And like I can't remember now because I think that some of them only had 10 years or so. If I'm not mistaken, they didn't all have 35 years to serve. So I just thought it was
Yeah.
crazy. Um, so on the night of the escape, Frank, Clarence, and John made their way up the ventilation shafts to taste the fresh air and the first time in a long time their freedom. But Alan West did not even get out of his room.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. So the one quote was West's hopes of escaping were quickly scuppered when he realized the cement he'd used to reinforce the concrete around the vent had hardened, preventing him from getting through the hole he'd made. By the time he'd managed to widen the hole again, his accomplices had gone. He went back to bed. I just feel so bad for him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it
Also,
didn't
like,
end great in the
why?
overall end, so I
I mean,
mean, at least he's still alive.
maybe at this point.
At that point, he was still alive.
Yeah, but a lot of people believe they made it out alive too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just don't understand why he wanted to reinforce it so badly that like they had to redo cement because all the rest of them had no problem. So it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But
I think they had to
I
like
don't know.
reset the grate in the wall like every day. So they probably had to put just
I
enough to
mean,
like hold it up that it didn't look or it wouldn't
yeah, like it
fall
was
out and
falling
stuff.
out.
And maybe he put too much.
Right. Yeah. That's all just hardened.
Yeah.
So when the others got to the top of the shaft, they ended up making a huge crashing noise as they broke through the top of the shaft. So they froze, hardly daring to breathe, certain they would be found at any moment. But the guards on duty just shrugged and likely carried on whistling with their hands in their pockets. I don't know. They then shimmied down the side of the building using the kitchen pipes or the bakery smokestack, depending on what you read, but apparently down the side of the kitchen. I like to think the bakery smokestack would smell wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh,
just like bread.
Oh my god. I worked in a bakery. It was kind of torture. Okay, so it was like 50 meat or 50 meat? Oh my god. The wall was 50 feet / 15 meters down. I'm sorry. They headed directly to this blind spot they knew of on the northeast shore that was hidden from the searchlights, that they could get away undetected. So then they inflated their little raft using improvised tools, and this time it was apparently a modified concertina stolen from another inmate, which apparently is kind of like an accordion as well. If you look up a concertina, like, to me it just looks like an accordion with little, instead of it being like rectangular shaped, it looks almost like little octagons with the little paddles.
Oh, yes. I've seen those. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I was like, okay. Because then I was like, is this the same? Like, he had an accordion, but then they were like, no, this was stolen from another inmate. I was like, okay, well, whatever then. It's not his accordion.
Yeah, it's more like about the size of your hands, where the accordion's like a lot bigger, isn't it?
I guess they just, used as like an air pump somehow. Maybe they made a little nozzle on one end. I don't know.
Huh. That's cool. I mean, they are inventive. They're like MacGyvering all up and down Alcatraz.
We're just gonna jury rig a freaking raft here. Steal an accordion from Al Yankovic? No.
4 paper mache heads later.
Oh my god, those are crazy. So according to legend, around 10 p.m. they were off and heading towards Angel Island. And while officially they've never been seen again and have since been declared dead, the authorities claiming they must have drowned. We don't really know that they did at that time. But at this point, it's been more than 60 years. So, they weren't discovered missing until the following morning. And that's when the search started. But they had a head start. They had a head start.
They had a paper mache head start.
Yeah, and then like civilian and military and all that went out, like law enforcement and that went out looking for them for like 10 days. They found some remnants like paddles found on the 14th of June, so just a couple days after the escape, that were found off the south coast of Angel Island. And then a wallet containing items like information on the Anglin brothers found that day.
Yeah.
Then 6 days later, shredded rubber was found near Golden Gate Bridge, and the day after that, they found a deflated life jacket picked up by a prison boat floating 50 yards from Alcatraz Island, but no bodies were ever found.
I can't remember what they determined. I know they did it on Mythbusters. They
really?
Yeah, they basically, I can't remember where they started, like if they redid the whole thing or if they just were focusing on the raft part of it. I know for sure they made the rafts. They used some sort of, I remember there being a glue involved in their raft. I don't think it was just stitched together. There was some sort of glue that they ended up using, but it was raincoats, and then they inflated it. And then they went out
pipes.
Yeah, I don't even know. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I watched the episode. And then they had kind of like whatever paddle you just talked about that they recovered. They had ones that were that they made and like carved themselves, and then they set out. I think the camera crew was like on a speedboat or on a rowboat or something beside them, and they were like attempting to row from Alcatraz Island off. And
that'd be tough.
I can't remember what the prognosis was, if they thought that they had possibly done it if
Oh.
weather conditions had been favorable.
Mm.
Because I know they talked about that in the
Oh.
currents that night. They had that information, like that's public record at this point, but
I mean, it's
yeah.
doable, is what I think I've determined. And
Yeah.
I have a story that we can talk about on our next one too. For that, I told you, I think I found some fun facts when I was looking up all this history that I was like, I'm gonna have to put this in the next episode. There's not gonna be any room.
Yeah.
But like, I think to even row it or to swim it is technically possible. To swim the
Yeah.
bay there,
If all
yeah,
the
which is
conditions, everything
crazy.
lines up good,
Oh,
like I'm sure it is possible.
which is just like crazy. They could be the only ones that ever really made it, right?
Yeah. If they did, they'd be the only ones that ever escaped.
Yeah, yeah. They
Mhm.
like were declared dead by the FBI, the BI, the whatever. As early as December of that same year, they supposedly escaped. So that was interesting, I thought. But the Anglin family, so of the brothers, the Anglin brothers, they were from Donaldsonville, Georgia, and they said they started receiving cards and postcards from the brothers, like from that year, and then their mother received
Yeah.
flowers every year until her death in 1973, and then her funeral was attended by two tall, heavily made up men, which was a little odd.
Yeah, I've heard that stuff before.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Yeah.
Hitler. Well, not really, but you know what I mean? The sightings where you're like, this person could be dead, but maybe not, because we've seen, like, there's so many sightings where people are like, we think we've seen them here.
Yeah.
And, well, basically the FBI officially closed it in 79, admitting that it lasted for nearly 2 decades. They were unable to determine whether the three men successfully escaped or died in the attempt. And the US Marshals officially took over the case, so it's not officially closed in that capacity. Um,
Oh, really? I don't think we'll ever
yeah,
really know.
I know, right? I think they said in one thing I read they're only keeping it open perfunctorily until a couple years from now when all the guys would be like officially over 100 years old or something, and I was like, that's
Yeah.
probably fair. But like,
Yeah.
just say you don't know, because at least the FBI is like, basically, we fucking don't know. We said that they're drowned, but we don't know. Like, no, you
Yeah.
don't. You didn't find their bodies. They have been cited apparently when, like in 1989, one of the other Anglin brothers, Robert, said that two men turned up to view the body of their dead father, who cried over him and then left. It was like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably your brothers.
Yeah, I
And
mean, you don't
then,
typically do that for a stranger.
yeah, no, I'm like, they seem so cagey about it, but then I'm like, of course they don't want to like give them up either, I would imagine. But I would say they kept their distance, the brothers. But there was a few other ones, like two women reported seeing them to Unsolved Mysteries, saying that they saw them in Florida near Mariana. And in 1993, an inmate named Thomas Kent claimed to have assisted in the escape, but said he had to stay behind because he could not swim. So I don't know why he would have thought he would have been a good candidate for that.
Yeah.
He also kind of claimed that Anglin's girlfriend, so one of the brothers' girlfriends, I guess, picked them up and drove them to Mexico, but many were skeptical of this as he was being paid handsomely for this TV interview he was giving. Go
Okay.
figure.
Yeah.
Interestingly, another man named John Leroy Kelly claimed he had murdered them all in order to keep the $40,000 their families had collected to aid in their escape. But when they searched the supposed dumping ground where he said the bodies were located, they found nothing. So, again,
Weird.
that one seems, yeah, like you just wanted some media attention. I don't know. Um, the Ken Widner, a nephew of John and Clarence Anglin, is convinced his uncles uncles survived the escape and made it off the island. He and his brother David have done a number of media interviews over the years, sharing what they believe to be proof that their relatives made it out of California safely. As a child, Widner, whose mother, Marie Anglin Widner, was John and Clarence's sister, was used to hearing the tale of his uncle's escape from Alcatraz. It's been a part of my life ever since I can remember, he tells The Independent. It was always something that was talked about in family reunions. Yeah. On the 50th anniversary in 2012, the family members showed this photo of the brothers, which I included on the drive, supposedly of them after the escape. According to Widner, the photo was taken by Fred Brizzy, a family friend who gave it to the Anglin family in 1992. It stayed in my mom's collection for all that time, he says, until he discovered it himself.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, is that where I ended it? Oh, because then maybe I had more on the paper. Do you see that it looks like they're in the 70s?
Yeah, they're so 70s, it hurts.
Tell me you're in the 70s without telling me you're in the 70s.
Yeah, all of it. The facial hair, the sunglasses, the haircuts, the shirts.
Yeah.
The graininess of this picture, the color of the picture.
The bell bottoms. No. But I often get reminded of ones where they were like, oh, and then we saw like this Nazi or Hitler or whatever hiding out in Brazil. I think that's the only reason why I was like, it's like the Nazis. Yeah. Was about it for their sightings. But it said in one thing, finally in 2018, the FBI confirmed that they had received a letter allegedly written by John Anglin. In the letter, Anglin revealed that both Morris and his brother Clarence were dead. The remaining prisoner said he would hand himself in exchange for medical treatment. So I think they meant hand himself over, or hand himself in, it said, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So perhaps he was sick? Yeah. But the FBI could not confirm the letter's authenticity, and they never heard from the writer again. So, was this the final word from the last man standing of the 1962 escapees? Oh yeah, and that's when I read that they said they would the Marshal Service would keep it open until 2030, when the men will all be over 100 years old. And that's when we'll officially get the closure on that case, I suppose. Yeah. Although I know what I think happened is that they made it out, those three, anyway.
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth whether or not they made it or they drowned.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I feel like drowned is just so much more likely, but...
I just think, why wouldn't they find the bodies then, But... I don't know.
Yeah.
Because we don't know officially, so it's fun to speculate.
Yes. Speculate wildly.
I know, if Dexter wasn't there holding their bodies down in the San Francisco Bay. Wait, was he in San Francisco? He was in Miami. Yeah. Anyway.
He was Bay Harbor, the Bay Harbor Butcher.
I know, it's always a bay. San Francisco Bay. I swear I read so many articles about San Francisco that there's websites that are like, do you want to sign up for SF Gate newsletters? I'm like, no, I just research here sometimes.
Oh,
so pathetic. I do not live there.
Yeah.
All right. Hope you liked it. We'll see you next week for more of this.
Yes, stay tuned. Bye-bye.
All right. Give us a 5-star. They'll do it in the meantime. We'll watch them until they do.
Creepy.
Keep it creepy. I mean, keep it cryptic. Bye.
This has been Castles and Cryptids. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and our YouTube channel. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit. On our website, you can listen to all of our episodes as well as view pictures for each of our segments. Check out our Patreon page to view all of our tiers and become a Patreon supporter today to unlock monthly bonus episodes and behind-the-scenes content. We are working on an Ask Us Anything. You can submit questions by social media or by email at castlesandcryptids@gmail.com. Do you have a spooky ghost story, a creepy cryptid sighting, or a thrilling true crime tale you would like to share and have us include in a future episode? Send us your listener story by social media or by email. Please include the name that you would like mentioned. Our music is by Kobe Fair. Our logo and artwork is by Antonio Garcia. Thanks for listening.